Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gilles Grin. I'm the director from the Jean Monnet Foundation for Europe. It's a great privilege to see you here tonight for this European dialogue with the title, How to Build a Sustainable Peace in Europe. Let me thank the organizations that make these events possible. Our foundation is helped by the State of Vaud, the Confederation, the City of Lausanne, the University of Lausanne, and the Loterie Romande. Tonight, it's also great to have a partnership for this event with the Association Jean Monnet. Henri Malosse will speak just after me and tell you a few words about this association. And indeed, we share a special interest, a legacy with the memory of Jean Monnet. And it's so great also tonight to have two eminent speakers, Ján Figel and Mariya Gabriel, who exercised the highest public offices in their respective countries, Slovakia and Bulgaria, and were also members of the European Commission. And if you have an interest, you can also find on the website of the RTS the interview which Mrs. Gabriel gave this morning to the press. So our theme is especially important today. If we look at the current news, it could be really despairing. 3 years, 6 months, and 15 days ago was the beginning of the full-scale war launched by Russia on its neighbor, Ukraine. And this despite a formal recognition of Ukraine by all the countries, including Russia, including safety guarantees given to Ukraine also by Russia, and a war, in fact, that had lasted now for more than 11 years, since 2014, but really it went full scale in 2022. And then, of course, we have another problem, not just Russia, but the United States from America. We have a new president, a new administration since last January, and the new policy is protectionist. We may say neo-mercantilist, it is nationalist, and we are still wondering if it's not also imperialist. And it's really a complete turn in the American policy towards Europe, this policy that had prevailed for the last 80 years. So it's despairing, and we also see that Ukraine and the Europeans are ready to have peace talks, but Russia doesn't want to. So we are really in the middle of a very hard period for Europe. It's a kind of stress test. It's a crossroads, ones that can happen every generation. So it may seem a kind of despairing situation. But in a study that I did, and you can find it on the website, Gagner la guerre, construire la paix, it's interesting when you look at Jean Monnet. Well, Jean Monnet produced a wonderful note in the summer of 1943 when he was in Algiers. It was still the middle of the war, but Jean Monnet was starting to think about the future world order. For him, then, it was important not to repeat the mistakes done after the First World War. And so he had a very inspiring thought, and he could contribute to a big piece of the solution in 1950 when he was the designer of the Schuman Declaration, and when then he became the first president of the first European community, the coal and steel community, in 1952. So this shows that even when you are in the middle of the dark, when you may seem to be lost, it's always important to think about the future, about what lays ahead. And Monnet was saying, I'm not optimistic, I'm not pessimistic, I'm determined. So to have this positive way of looking at the future and to think about it. And that's why it's really so great that it was the idea of the Jean Monnet Association. We are so happy of this partnership, and we are so happy of the talks by our two speakers, but then of the discussion with you, because even if it's very difficult now, it's important to see the light that should come at one point. But when, under which conditions, I think this will be the object of tonight's discussion. So I'm really very happy that you are here. I also salute the people online. And now I leave the floor to my friend and colleague, Henri Malosse.
Okay. Bonsoir. Good evening. Thank you very much, dear Gilles. Yes, it's a big event, but we could co-organize an event between the Foundation Jean Monnet and the Association Jean Monnet. So you will think, why do we need so many Jean Monnet's bodies? In fact, this is history, and each of the two organizations have their reasons of existence. And in fact, the association was established after the disparition of Jean Monnet by his family and his friends for two main reasons. So the foundation is to keep the archives and all the memories, but the association was to keep his house, the house where he lives is the last years of his life in Oujaré, Bazoches, Oujaré, near Paris, who has become the property of the European Parliament, but the Association Jean Monnet has his seat there. But not just to keep the house. Keep the house, okay, nice, but mainly to keep his spirit. And I think the way we organize that event together and the way we really want to work together, all because there is also a representative of Robert Schuman Institute or Robert Schuman Foundation for the legacy of Robert Schuman. I think we are all together in the same boat, all together in the way, it's falling down, in order to build what was always the aim of the European Union, to build peace, not war. Gilles already used one of the expressions I want to use. This was the famous sentence of Jean Monnet. So I won't repeat it. I'm not optimistic, not pessimistic. I am determined, but I will use another one, which I think fits perfectly with our meeting. This is, we don't unite states, we unite people. And that was the purpose of Monnet and Schuman, and that is our purpose now. So European continent experiment now the war. It's not the first time since 1945. Despite all the ignorant journalists or commenters repeat all day long. We had, unfortunately, with the dislocation of Yugoslavia in the Balkan, a horrible war with more than 200,000 people who died. It was unnecessary, totally useless war, and still not everything is not solved in Bosnia, Kosovo, and so on. It's not the first time. But today we have a real fratricide war. As a result, can have a lot of discussion about that, but same time the dislocation of former USSR and also of a revival of Russian imperialism. But as I mentioned, European project is about to think beyond and to think about the next generation and to think about sustainable peace. So we had the Balkan War, now we have the Ukrainian-Russian war, but we have to overcome that. The Jean Monnet Association is particularly proud that we were among the first. I remember because I was part of this delegation of two persons with Philippe Lorette, who is also now the chairman of the association. We were going in 2005 in Kyiv to explain to the Academy of Political Science of Ukraine what is about European integration, what is the legacy of Jean Monnet, and what for they should fight for. Some years later, with my friend Olivier Védrine, who will make the conclusion, with a very important person, member of our association. We were together on Maidan Square, 2013, during Christmas. We spent a night there. It was quite cold. And in 2014, I deserve that to have been banned to Russia, but that's not important. Important there is that we were there not just against the Russians. We are there in favor of the European integration of Ukraine. And in 2022, our association was the first European NGOs to ask the European Commission to open negotiation for accession of Ukraine as a sign of goodwill. Doesn't mean that Ukraine has to join the EU immediately, but to start the negotiation. Despite all this engagement, our engagement is also, and my personal engagement was also for dialogue and peace. Even when we were in Maidan with Olivier, I organized that, was at that time the president of European ECOSOC, and I organized a meeting with the Russian ECOSOC and Ukrainian ECOSOC. And we try discreetly, confidentially, to keep way of dialogue. Because sustainable peace is something despite the dictatorship, despite the dictators, despite the difficulty, we should have that in mind. As Jean Monnet said, to unite the people, not to unite the nations, to unite the people of the European continent. I will sorry to say, because I'm Corsican, so I will use my home city, from Bastia to Vladivostok. It's all Europeans. And as Gilles was telling us when we visit the beautiful house of Jean Monnet, Fondation Jean Monnet pour la Paix, that when Jean Monnet was asked in the, I think, 50s or 60s, what do we do with Spain? He said, when Spain becomes a democracy, we take Spain in the European Union, European construction. And when he was like, what's about Russia? Same answer. Let's take Russia when Russia became a democracy. So it's important to keep always a perspective, a vision, and a hunt for a dialogue. And as soon as that horrible war will be finished, we can really work again. But we need a plan. We need to offer something to all these Ukrainian, Russian people who are fighting for a fratricide war. And despite the dictator, despite the hate, despite all the river of blood that some person, my friend Olivier, used today, despite that, we have to be optimistic and to see a way for a sustainable peace. This is the responsibility. I blame the European leaders for the last 5 years. This is my personal thinking, not from the association, but they don't propose anything. What do they propose to end the war? We have to propose something to end, not just words, not just weapons. We need something that deserve a peace, because the Ukrainian nation deserves a peace. All this tragedy, it's a tragedy. And I will finish to say that I'm very happy that we have that event here in Lausanne, in Switzerland. And thank you, Gilles, thank you for the support of the forum, of the foundation, because Switzerland is an example. I understood that Gilles was telling us during the lunch, the last civil war was almost 200 years ago, among the various factions and ethnic in Switzerland, and now you succeed in almost 2 centuries to preserve peace as an example for all of us. Despite a lot of reasons, we have always good reason to hate each other. Even we have good reason to hate the neighbor because he makes too much noise, because he's crossing your garden or whatever. But dialogue, you need the people, respect human dignity, and that was the main reason to have this event together. I think the idea is to launch a new Monnet Schuman plan to end and to come back to the roots of the European Union. That means sustainable peace. Thank you very much, and happy for that meeting. I think now we give the floor to Ján Figel. Okay.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I thank cordially to Gilles Grin and Henri Malosse for the invitation, and all of you for your time, willingness, openness to lead a dialogue about probably the most important continental or even international issue of our times, which is not only future of Europe, but rather future of peace in 21st century. Can this time of our living be more humane, more peaceful, or it will be business as usual, like in the 20th century? Most of my life was in the 20th century. Half of my life was in the divided Europe under Stalinist or totalitarian Czechoslovakia. I publicly said that I pay tribute and should pay price for the highest sacrifice of my uncle, who was killed by the secret services of Stalinist Czechoslovakia. So some people paid the highest price to allow us to be here, to discuss about future, but not only, I am here not only to discuss, but to get together with like-minded, to do something. Because today we can do something for tomorrow. We may, set alarm clock for tomorrow, it's only hope. But now, today, we are here and invited to do something. I was 20 years ago Commissioner for Education, Culture, Youth, and so on, and I used to say young people, and I want to tell you that people are very young and well-looking. So education is not preparation for life, education is life itself. Therefore, lifelong learning is a must. Without lifelong learning, there is less and less lifelong earning. So being here at the academic space, we should learn, and also learn about peace as very important human objective, achievement, gift to our children, to others. What Jean Monnet did, and it was already quoted, he prepared during war to achieve lasting peace, not only appeasement, not only end of war. And he and Robert Schuman and their generation succeeded. It was not easy. It was much more difficult than to speak about peace today, but they did it. John Maynard Keynes, founder of modern macroeconomy, said that Jean Monnet had shortened the war by a year, and I think he was right. And what Monnet planned for France was modernization after a tragedy, and his message was modernization or decadence for France. And Schuman Monnet plan for Europe in 1950 was, of course, aimed not only to modernization, but lasting peace, which means stability and prosperity for Europe. And we owe them a lot. So if I ask a few questions like, should peace be truly the most important objective for us, for Europeans? Of course, our answer would be yes. Second, is lasting peace achievable in short time, let's say 2025? Maybe not so visibly, but we should say yes, and not only say yes. This year can be a U-turn, can be. I will speak on this a bit more. And the third question, theoretically, will peace in our end of Ukrainian war be beneficial to Ukraine, Russia, or both and all? I am sure that correct answer is both and all of us, and not only in Europe. Because also, when we look to the world, there is still very important Latin principle, nemo dat quod non habet. nobody can give what he or she does not have, possess. So if Europe is a continent of peace, principle, lasting, real, not only armistice, it can share it in the Middle East, in the world. And that's our role, that's our responsibility. Not only to consume the past achievements, but to contribute to the more humane 21st century. The recent summit of United States and Russian presidents in Alaska on August 15 was an extraordinary opportunity to launch a renewed and productive dialogue between two superpowers in our civilizational space. Results are not satisfactory so far, but objective remains unchanged. End of damaging development and long confrontation, which is the bloody war in Ukraine since 2022, and the second Cold War since 2014. We can label it as a second Cold War since Crimea time. The European integration process has stagnated in the last decade or even reversed with Brexit. If we want to succeed with the peace plan for the whole Europe, we need to perceive the whole and complex reality of Europe and its neighborhood, and now is the time. For the fathers of United Europe after the Second World War, peace action was determined by a careful analysis of realities, by awareness of duties, and the search of possibilities, the three. At the same time, they had the courage, creativity, and perseverance to implement the necessary actions on the basis of proven principles and values. For reminder and inspiration, let us recall the words of three important Europeans. The first one is Robert Schuman. He was post-war prime minister and real statesman. I quote, "We must construct Europe not only in the interest of the free peoples alone, but also to be able to welcome in Europe the peoples of the East, who, freed from the repression that they have been subject to until the present, will ask us for their adhesion and for our moral support. We consider as integrating part of a living Europe all those who desire to rejoin us in a reconstituted community." German Chancellor Konrad Adenauer, in his message on security and peace for all in 1953, spoke about two major actions. The first, in order to meet a possibly existing Soviet security requirement to regional alliance of the European community, after being joined to the NATO, can be brought into a contractual relationship to the regional alliances of the East Bloc within the scope of an all-embracing structure, including military side of the system. And the second message, as economic cooperation and political security are interdependent, the funds becoming available by a general control of armaments can be utilized to increase the international exchange of goods and raise the standard of living of all nations. Charles de Gaulle, President of France, in his famous speech in 1959 in Strasbourg, declared, "Yes, it is Europe from the Atlantic Ocean to the Urals. It is Europe, all of Europe, which will decide the fate of the world." Ladies and gentlemen, were all these personalities wrong, mistaken? They communicated their visions openly during the hard confrontation years of the Cold War. Therefore, I am convinced it must be much easier to formulate a true road to peace, stability, and security for all nations today, in freedom, after collapse of communist regimes in Europe. Dream of fathers was Europe free and one, whole, from Atlantic to Ural as one community. Collapse of Soviet Empire was a great opportunity to speed up work for lasting peace in Europe. West won the Cold War, but we didn't win peace. True peace among nations is much more than absence of military confrontation. Do you know a statesman, leader, or personality today who could be labeled as Jean Monnet or Robert Schuman have been? Pragmatic visionary, father of Europe. Idea of Europe whole and free should not wait until the war ends. It should serve as a strong and attractive offer and motivation for sustainable peace on the continent. I will try to apply Schuman Monnet legacy for getting Europe back into the center of our international relations in positive and inspirational manner, shaping our future towards peace, security, and prosperity. My message today here is in 3 points: human dignity, European Union as actor and peace builder or peacemaker, and a new West-East community for peace in Europe. Dignity. European fathers believed that lasting and true peace is a fruit of reconciliation and justice. For them, human freedom, responsibility, dignity have been inseparable. Justice today is understood as respect to fundamental rights of individuals and communities. But foundational principle of human rights is human dignity. Human dignity is a fact from which rights and duties are derived. And therefore, respect to human dignity of all is a road to peace for all. We are all equal in dignity, and we are all different in identity. It's not a problem, it's definition. In Paris, under leadership of France in December 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. And the very first sentence says, recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Human dignity in that document is mentioned 5 times in one document, UDHR. More than 160 countries today in the world refer to human dignity in their constitutions, including the most populous country, India, in the preamble, if you read 1947 Constitution of India. But for Europe, Schuman insisted, and not without opposition, on the creation of a system of human rights protection based on the supranational rule of law, rather than on only declaratory document. And therefore, Council of Europe in May 1949 was established, and later on the Court. And in May 1950, a year later, Schuman Declaration of the French government was adopted to create European Community for Coal and Steel, based again on supranational principles and open to all free countries. And in the same year, November, there was a signature in Rome of the Convention on Human Rights by Schuman and 11 other national leaders. So, roots of Europe, it is not the past, it is presence and future, like with the trees. Roots are not so visible, but indispensable for good fruits. We must return to our roots, revitalize them, nurture spiritual part of our individual and collective being as communities and nations. In line with European founding fathers, we should understand human dignity as a departure point, as a criterion, and as an objective of all public policies and measures. Dignity is a fact, and from this fact, our rights and duties are stemming. Rights and duties are 2 sides of the same coin. Regrettably, in the last decades, we used to forget duties. We spoke, we taught, lectured a lot on rights, but not so much on duties. Rights without duties are not sustainable. Freedom without responsibility is detrimental, even suicidal. Western and Eastern Europe should avoid detrimental and divisive ideologies. We need serving leaders who see widely, wide picture, and in the long-term perspective. More than increased armament and defense spending, Europe needs mature leadership with wisdom, courage, perseverance to create future, not to consume future at the cost of next generations. Second is European Union. In 75 years of successes and failures, we have been learning together how to live, work, and walk in peace. From Franco-German reconciliation it went to 6 founding countries and grew into the union of 27 members with 10 candidate countries. It's a unique achievement. EU became a soft power based on attractiveness of freedom, security, and prosperity. Brexit weakened European Union and unity, while confirmed the freedom to exit, to leave. After 5 years, we see a new convergence between London and Brussels. EU was actually moving, growing, and changing in times of crisis. You recall oil crisis, constitutional crisis, financial crisis, and now security. And this is still fully in line with Schuman's plan, counting on gradual integration process. Concerning future of the European Union, we need as much integration as necessary to achieve shared objectives of our member states and to guarantee as much freedom as possible for our people and citizens. 4 objectives are very urgent for the European Union. The first is maximum support of Europe's competitiveness through technological and systemic innovation. Innovation becomes an imperative, not if, but must. Europe must play in global Champions League of new technologies, higher education, applied research, and innovations. Actually, the EU itself, or European integration, is a political innovation per se. Second, based on current challenges, it is time again to build European defense community, based on current Lisbon Treaty, using the enhanced cooperation, the clause which is for like-minded and ready to move member states. Third, Union must maintain constructive dialogue and develop beneficial economic and trade cooperation with all important partners and organizations, including BRICS. Fourth, undelayed enlargement of the European Union is a must, not a mercy of the West towards the East. I can assure you that price of non-enlargement, it is much higher than enlargement expenditures. A union with all new members is more European, more complete. World War I, the First World War, started in Sarajevo. Therefore, lasting peace through EU enlargement must come back to Sarajevo and Western Balkans as well. And the third point is a new West-East community. After February 2014, a revolution in Kyiv, civil war started in east of Ukraine. Russia took over Crimea, and the Second Cold War started. In absence of true political and diplomatic effort, it turned into tragic full war after invasion of Russian military to Ukrainian territory in February 2022. Instead of getting closer, we have witnessed divergence between East and West of Europe. This fratricidal war in Ukraine must be stopped as soon as possible. Solution for lasting peace must be creative and constructive, based on dignity of peoples on both sides of front line. It is not about future of leaders. Neither Putin, nor Zelensky, nor Trump. It is about people and their future. Leaders are coming and going, but nations remain. People on war-torn territories suffer and die every day, every night. They equally desire and deserve peace. Ladies and gentlemen, potential solution is at hand, and I say it especially here in Lausanne after the visit of Jean Monnet Foundation. It can be labeled as Schuman Plan number 2, because the original plan is not dead. It's living, it's fruitful, it's visible, it's not short-term. 3 generations now are part of the Schuman Plan in Europe. Original role of Franco-German rapprochement is now proposed for 2 major military and political powers in our civilizational space, United States and Russian Federation. Many in the world today define war on Ukraine as a proxy war between the 2 nuclear superpowers. With the exception of 2 Cold War periods, relations between the 2 countries were constructive and cooperative. By the way, Russia supported US independence among the first. Judeo-Christian roots on the both sides should nurture their global responsibility for peace and for security. And desire for prosperity is close and dear to all people, East, West, North, South. Clementy Venerable Schuman Legacy Foundation, which I also represent here, proposes to create common markets for strategic commodities and resources of the both superpowers, namely energy and energy infrastructure, raw and natural materials, information technology, and intellectual property. Participation must remain open to all countries and groups of countries who accept such exceptional agreement, first of all from Europe, North America, and Central Asia. A new community connecting this way Alaska with Kamchatka, but through Europe and Central Asia, will emerge representing enormous, unprecedented economic potential. This may lay foundations for the North Hemisphere community or West-East community. This potential great deal between the 2 superpowers will enable to find an acceptable compromise, an end of the war in Ukraine faster and easier. And it will generate resources for dynamic reconstruction of all destroyed territories and infrastructure. The first reactions to this proposed plan or proposed ideas from East and West are encouraging. And my last contribution is about potential package, how to end the war. With this pragmatic vision, I use the term which was labeled to Jean Monnet by many, pragmatic visionary. With this pragmatic vision, there is a narrow path, from the war in Ukraine to peace, which includes several critical conditions and important goals. It is a package of conditions, guarantees, and assets. 5. The first one is the sequence of ceasefire, peace agreement, stability, security, reconstruction, and prosperity is an invitation for fair, dynamic negotiations and compromises between Ukraine and Russia. Such negotiations of peace agreement will be supported by parallel ceasefire. Peace agreement as a package will be important also to other states, especially to Europe and the United States, in order to guarantee the agreed steps and conditions. Second, displaced populations, displaced people and refugees from war-affected territories must be given a respected right to return. 3. If the distracted territories are to be restored soon and successfully, they cannot remain isolated and internationally unrecognized. A reasonable transition period, 7, maximum 10 years, with international supervision and local self-government should be agreed and implemented. Free and fair regional plebiscites under international monitoring and control with the participation of the Ukraine and Russian Federation on the basis of the right of the population to self-determination will decide on their future constitutional status, whether they are and will be Russian, Ukrainian, autonomous, or independent, with international recognition of borders. That's very important. Future. 4. The destroyed territories need reconstruction with great financial potential, ending all imposed economic and financial sanctions. A common fund will be established for the reconstruction of all war-ravaged territories and infrastructure, which will operate over the same period of time. And the last, 5th, creation of conditions and instruments for common markets in strategic resources and commodities, I mentioned them, initiated by the United States and the Russian Federation and open to all free nations, can be a long-term instrument for security, stability, and prosperity of all. It is qualitatively more than unilateral security guarantees. Ladies and gentlemen, with loyalty to fundamental human values and pragmatic realism, lasting peace in Europe can be achieved in the same spirit and legacy of the successful fathers of Europe. Their principles, their legacy is not a dead legacy, it's living. And it does not depend on more armaments, but on creative and constructive policy and mature leadership of relevant countries. Legacy of Schuman Monnet can get Europe back into the center of human history in positive and inspirational manner, shaping our common future towards peace, shared security, and prosperity. I call upon all of you to join in support. It is difficult, but achievable and rewarding task. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear Ján, and now give the floor to Mariya Gabriel.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, first of all, thank you very much. Thank you, Gilles. Thank you, Foundation of Jean Monnet Association, Jean Monnet. It's a great honor to be here and to have this discussion on such a difficult topic. I think that today there is no more difficult from this one, but at the same time it's so intellectually stimulating. And I want to start with a quote from Jean Monnet saying that rien n'est possible sans les hommes, rien n'est durable sans les institutions. Nothing is possible without men, nothing is sustainable without institutions. And I think here that we have to face a double challenge. I think that more than ever, if you'd like to build a sustainable peace, we need a much stronger European leadership, men and women. And we have to admit that the institutions that we have built, our European Union, that was somehow a mistake, the tendency from the last year to consider them as universal. They are not universal, they are an exception. And we are proud of this exception because we built it with our history, with our extraordinary diversity of people, of countries, small, medium ones, economically developed, but also addressing some challenges. So I think that more than ever today, when we talk about the peace and especially focused on the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, we need not only to talk about Ukraine and Russia, we also need to talk about our partners in the world and our relations with them. And we have to admit that the transatlantic relation is not the only one that is shaping the possible issues. We need also, as European Union, to ask ourselves what we need to change, what we need to innovate in our relations with the others. And here is coming my second point. Actually, I think that we are facing a European dilemma. On one side, we want to act independently to help Ukraine to win, but immediately we see our limits. What about the positions of all our member states? We don't have a unanimity, it's obvious. What about the means and the tools that we have in our hands? And I'm not talking only about the next budget of the European Union. We'll see a debate the next 1 year on all this. On the other side, we know that the US guarantee securities are the main condition for many. For that, we are making concessions. But my question is how these concessions are looking from one side internally on behalf of our citizens. And we see that some political parties are instrumentalizing them because they not see us as an actor, as something that is strong. And that's also the case, we have to admit it, for our external partners. Making concessions in order to have the only one unique US security guarantee, the question, of course, it's very credible. What are your limits? And that's why I think that here it's highly time to talk about a power agenda for Europe. I think definitely that we have to dare. Maybe I'm coming from a different generation. I don't have some memories from the Second World War, but I represent a generation that is belonging and believing in the European Union. And that's why I started with the exception. I'm talking about power not as protectionist, aggressive, isolationist, but I'm talking about power who protects dialogue, cooperation with education, with culture, but also with strategic sectors like energy, health, security, and defense. And I think that that's something that we need to promote more and more, because after all, you build sustainable peace when you are seen as power to be on the table. And sorry for saying that, but we already have seen how much often we were invited to the table. So now, for sure, I don't have all the answers, and that's why for me, I said it's very intellectually stimulating. I think that we are definitely exploring a pivotal and multifaceted issue. It's true that today it's more than ever difficult to answer to a question how to build a sustainable peace in Europe in a world that is increasingly interconnected. Because the notion of peace, it's not merely the absence of conflict. It involves creating conditions that promote security, stability, and mutual respect among nations. I'm sure that I will not touch upon all the details and the aspects, but today I will look at 4 main points of discussion. The first is the role of security and defense in peace building and the impact of the defense industry on regional stability. The second point that I would like to insist on is our power as single market. And maybe it's really highly time to move from reports to action plans, because you already know I'm referencing here clearly to the report of Enrico Letta. But I want really to show that single market, the European single market, the trade agreements, they have a particularly important role to play as instrument for peace. Of course, as former commissioner, European Commissioner for Innovation, I would like also to put forward innovation as catalyst of peace. We don't talk too much about this, but it's just, for me, the best example is to see how for the last 3 years, the innovation cycle that our Ukrainian friends manage to have, it's amazing. And it's a complete difference in comparison with what we have in some of our countries. And 4 point, it's the most provocative one probably, but here I join Ján, enlargement. Because you are a power when you show that what you already have promised for many years, you are able to fulfill it, and after you can claim new conditions and you can acquire new role. So I think that here my main invitation to you, it will be to encourage everyone to think critically about our discussion and to consider what's about the implication and the contribution of your own communities. So first, of course, the role of security and defense in peace building. Today, I think that it's a reality. We can continue to claim that we want dialogue and cooperation, but we shifted. We are living in a different era, and security is a cornerstone of sustainable peace. And in Europe, this is often facilitated through joint initiatives and organizations such as the European Union and NATO. And here, talking about NATO, I'm always referencing, of course, to the principle of collective defense, but I want to see much more references to our own article in our own treaty where this collective defense is much strongly expressed. But it's true that when you have this collective defense, when you attack one and that is considered as attack on all, that is a powerful deterrent against external threats. And I think that here we need definitely to see much more actions and to see how these alliances are working to strengthening our collective security. I must say that for the last 3 years, what I see as a positive development is that many of the countries in the European Union finally started to see and to analyze in a deeper manner what's happened on the eastern flank. And always have one example, Bulgaria, the eastern border is the Black Sea. And do you know that just a few months ago, the European Union didn't have a strategy on the Black Sea? That is a strategic region. And just our neighbor is Turkey, the second most powerful in NATO. And when the crisis with the wheat arrived with Ukraine, suddenly we discovered that we have things to do, but that was not done before. So I think that here Europe should continue to stay very pragmatic, but also to see what's about our own role. I don't want even to mention the so-called European defense pillar within NATO, because for many years we are talking about this, but I think that more than ever we have to dare and to be very clear with our citizens and with our partners. But here, again, my question is, can a balance be achieved between military preparedness and diplomatic negotiations? It's a very difficult question. And what are the means, the tools that we have in our hands, and how we can learn already some lessons from the last 3 years. Of course, I want also to talk about the defense industry, because the defense industry plays quite a complex role in the realm of European peace. On one hand, it can bolster national security, but on the other, it's true that it can create tension and competition among nations. And I always have in mind one example. We know that we have to have joint procurements between member states in order to advance much more rapidly. We already changed the objective from 30 to 40%. And today we have 18%. In research and development in defense, the joint cooperation is only 6%. So I think that we have really to address the right questions if we want to bring on the table a credible action plan and to say that's how we see the possible steps and to build peace. Of course, all this question of PESCO, the structures that we have, All this is raising issues for the pooling of resources and the sharing capabilities. And of course, we all know what are our main limits: fragmentation, lack of cooperation between member states, duplication. So more than ever, we need really to address these issues. Now, my question here is, how can Europe can ensure that the defense spending translates into genuine security rather than escalating tensions? Because we need also to address this issue. The second point that I want to touch upon is, of course, the single market and the trade agreements and instruments for peace. I definitely believe that the European single market serves as a significant framework for fostering sustainable peace in Europe. We have key arguments for that. Of course, one of them changed now. It was the first one for me, it's always economic interdependence. Because countries invested in each other's economies are less likely to engage in conflict. But today, we all have seen how dependencies and interdependencies can become vulnerabilities, how they can be weaponized. And that's something that we should address. We have key sectors here, from the energy to many others that we even don't talk so openly. But it's true that it's something that we need to address. But I fully believe that between us as member states of the European Union, we can really transform the possible vulnerabilities into other opportunities for power, because we are working together and because we are interdependent. Of course, when we talk about the single market, we talk about stability through cooperation, and that's a very important point, because we all considered for many long time that alignment of regulations and standards that will have as a result a simplified trade, but also that will build trust, that will help for joint investments. It's true, but today maybe we have to raise our voices and to tell these success stories, because many of them, infrastructures or this interconnectedness that we have today and that reinforced our peaceful relations, it was done thanks to the European Union. But here, I must say that we need to be much more vocal, because those that are fighting against, they are extremely vocal. They are using disinformation, fake news, all kind of social media. So that's for me a big challenge that we have ahead of us. Of course, when we talk about single market, and you already probably have seen that I didn't mention education and culture, because I fully believe in the power of education and culture for peace. But I envisage them under this angle of the single market, because the free movement of persons is helping this common understanding, mutual understanding, this cultural exchange, educational opportunities, and that's something that allows citizens to be much more engaged in different cultures, in different governance styles. So for me, it's something that we should definitely continue to maintain. I can't see it really, probably with the new European budget, with the big project of the Agora. Maybe we have some chances, but let's see what will be the exact details of the proposal. And when we talk about the free movement of persons, I definitely want here to support the idea of Enrico Leto of the fifth freedom for researchers, because we know that our single market is 4 freedoms, but more than ever. And yes, if you would like to prepare young generations in those countries where now we have conflicts and where it seems quite impossible now to step over all the sufferances that they have, we need to invest, and we need to invest in those young people by culture, education, research. I'm very much convinced that they can perspectives here to be offered. Of course, for me, here I will not enter into the details, but the single market has also another important aspect to take into account. It's to maintain channels of dialogue and to anticipate possible conflicts. That's something that we didn't exploit enough. in the past, we can definitely use it much more often. Of course, when we talk about trade agreements, we all know that they offer an extraordinary possibilities. They are platforms for nations to build relationships and foster cooperation. Yeah, definitely here I think that Europe needs to change the pace and we need to innovate. It's not easy. We need also, since the very beginning, to work with the public opinions, because when we see some debates on Mercosur, I'm fully convinced that we have to have Mercosur. That's my personal position. We simply can't continue like that. We need definitely here to see how economic integration can lead to lasting peace among member states, among partners, and by the way, it's offering new possibilities. The same, the trade agreements are also important in order to build geopolitical alliances. I mentioned it at the beginning because they extend beyond economic benefits. They also serve as tools for geopolitical stability. And by forming trade partnerships with neighboring countries and not neighboring countries, Europe definitely can mitigate some risks of conflicts. Now, my question, of course, is how can trade policy be designed to promote not only economic growth, but also peace? And that's an important question. My third point is innovation. Innovation for me can serve definitely as a powerful catalyst for creating sustainable peace by fostering economic growth, enhancing communication, promoting social cohesion. It's true that we have advancements, we have also risk, but we need to address them because today we all know that technologies such as social media and mobile platforms can facilitate dialogue, can foster understanding among diverse communities. Yes, we have the challenge of the fake news and the disinformation, but that's for me a challenge. That's not a fatality. And we need to use more and more tools to advocate for peace and tolerance. And I fully believe that technology can play a significant role in conflict prevention. The same when we talk about innovation, we also have to talk about sustainable development technologies because we address the issue of the energy, but innovations can promote energy efficiency, can promote sustainable agriculture. We can be very concrete in what we want and what we can achieve with innovation as tool of peace. And unfortunately, I regret it that we don't use enough digital diplomacy and conflict resolution. I must say that when I was foreign minister of Bulgaria, there was only one single debate on this issue for all the time that I've been. I don't think that it's enough. I don't think that it's enough to write a nice paper, to have it adopted by all the member states, to have a nice discussion, conclusions. They are important ideas in the document, and I want really to see some more proactive measures that are enabling and allowing the policymakers to address grievances before they escalate into conflict. And yeah, of course, here we have a lot of questions, but maybe my question is really what role should Europe play in harnessing innovation to address contemporary peace and security challenges? I'm sure that every one of us has a different position, but I'm sure that we also can identify common points. And final point, probably that's the most provocative because we tend not to think about this when we have a conflict like Ukraine and Russia to solve, but I think that we didn't realize that after the Russian invasion in Ukraine, the question of enlargement completely changed. Now enlargement became a tool of geopolitical and geoeconomic influence. In only 3 years, we doubled the number of countries that are candidates. No one is talking about. At the same time, we have definitely to change the approach. We definitely should stop to talk about negotiation chapters because citizens can't be patient anymore. Of course, we have a heart that is not negotiable. It's democracy, it's our fundamental principles, rule of law, fighting corruption. But at the same time, I very much welcome that we changed our approach, and now we are talking about gradual integration, offering them with the growth plan that was adopted in 23, some of the benefits of the single market in order to encourage them to move much faster. Because many of them, at least I know the region quite well, especially it's quite alarming when we see that young people start to be deceived. And we can't lose this generation. They have a lot of opportunities. They are Europeans. And yeah, we should not talk only about leaders. But again, for me, this part of our foreign policy is something that we should exploit in a better way. Because in that way, I think also that when you are able to show that you can promote peace, not where you want to see it as an end, as a solution, but also where is needed, I think that we have much more chances to convince. It was said by Henri Malosse, it's not the first time that we have now again the war on the European continent. In the 90s, what happened with ex-Yugoslavia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and even today, there are tensions that are very alarming. So more than ever, I think that Europe should be engaged and to show that there is a different way to create conditions for peace, after to show that this is a model to follow and model for political stability, for economic development. And we have enough data, I must say, in our hands to show it. And I very much hope that this time will not stop our discussion only on which year we'll accept them, in 2030 or not, and also unanimity or not unanimity. Again, we are stopping on the things that are very bureaucratic, perceived as bureaucratic by citizens. If you want to build a sustainable peace, we need to be political, to make political choices, to act in a very pragmatic way, and of course to show that our power is our capacity of cooperation, respect, but also innovative approaches. So in conclusion, I must say that I tried to provide some answers, but every answer is really linked to much more questions. But that's for me the only one way. We need much more debates like this one to have a critical mass where a concrete proposal, concrete action plan can be identified. It's true that there is no silver bullet point. For me, it's sure when we address a complex topic like this one. But as we reflect on this topic, I want really to consider the role each of us plays in fostering understanding and cooperation. Because above all, sustainable peace, it's not solely the responsibility of governments or institutions. It requires active participation from citizens in advocating for policies that prioritize dialogue over discord. They are showing clear priorities, and believe me, for being also politician at the national member state, very often it's quite facilitating the task of the governments when a strong position is expressed by the citizens. It's not always comfortable, but that's why it's our role, critical thinking with a very noble cause, peace, in order to show that these exceptional periods that we had in our history, we are able to achieve it again, to maintain it, and that's based on our founders, on our principles, and on our strength as power of cooperation and dialogue, giving perspectives and expressing respect, but also daring, but also being firm when it is necessary. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mariya. Thank you so much, Ján. Now I would like to invite Mr. Olivier Védrine to come to the floor and present his comments. Olivier has a double helmet. On the one hand, he's a very acclaimed journalist, but on the other one, he's also a university professor currently teaching in Ukraine. And so I think it's very, very valuable to have you with these two visions and two sides. So now the floor is yours.
Bonsoir. Good evening. Thank you for this invitation. I am very, very proud, very happy to be there to speak about peace and Europe. I understand you are different species, but for me, I spent 10 years in Ukraine, in Kyiv. With Henri, we were on Maidan. After that, I had my own TV show to fight against Russian propaganda and support Ukraine to go to the EU. At the same time, I gave courses almost in all the universities of Ukraine. And the 24th of February 2022, I wake up in the morning, very early in the morning, because two big noises I heard. I go to the windows and I saw fire. And I understood that was the end of the world I know. Yes, this war in Ukraine is the end of a past world. And now we are in a new world. Stop to think about what we were. Stop to think about the past. We have to build the future. Then, the 24th of February, at the same time, because I am a writer for journalists, I wrote article for Tribune de Genève, still 2017. And on this day, I received a call from Tribune de Genève because I was prepared an article to ask EU to take Ukraine urgently. And the first sentence was, we are in danger, the war will come. And Tribune de Genève asked me, Olivier, I publish your article today, the 24th of February. I change only one sentence. We are in war. And the title of my article was L'appel de Kiev, a call from Kiev. And I asked EU to support Ukraine now. And this article was printed, published the 24th of February by the Tribune of Genève. I slept in the shelter, and I say what I have to do. I have to stay, I have to leave. And I ask my friend, Ukrainian friends, what I have to do. And they say, Olivier, go to the West. Say to the people, say to the media, what's happened here. You will be more successful on TV in France, on TV in Canada, on your conference everywhere from Canada, US, in EU, to support Ukraine than to stay here. And one Ukrainian came, take me in his car. We crossed this city of Kiev under attack. I go to a building. In the morning, I go to the railway station. An Ukrainian was waiting me in Lviv, in the west of Ukraine, took me in the mountains, hide me in the forest, and say, please stay here. when we will be ready, you will cross the border. And for me, war and peace is not only a theory. It's what I lived and it's what I am living now. What I am living now is, you have Facebook, you have WhatsApp, you have LinkedIn. Me, every day, I open Facebook, and you have the birthday. Every day, I say happy birthday to my Ukrainian friends. Why? Because sometimes some of them are not there. They are killed. Every day, I took news like that from my friends. This is concrete. This is what is the war. Then for me, this is not only a conference. This is what I am living. This is what I living my friends. And I lost a lot of friends. I lost some of my students. And I lost, I can say, a part of a paradise, because Kyiv, under peace, is like a paradise. This is a love story between a city, Kyiv, a country, Ukraine, and me. And one day, one man decided to destroy my love story. And you will be sure I will never give up. I will always fight for this country, Ukraine, and for Europe. But I am living in these European values. I am fighting for them. When I was in Ukraine, as I said, I was on TV show to speak about European values. For me, peace, sustainable peace in Europe, is the first question if we want to survive. But be sure that if you want peace with somebody like Putin, and I don't say Russian people, I say Putin and Putin system, you must be ready to fight. You cannot have peace without force, without to be strong. Putin only believes in force, in army. No way if you say only good things. I don't want to speak with you, I don't have the time to speak about Soviet Union diplomacy. How many people were killed when they go to negotiation, like in Hungary in 1956. If you want to negotiate with a former KGB agent, you have to negotiate with his own weapons. That's, you have to negotiate with force, and you have to be strong. Then for me, and I agree with what was said before, the first target is to build our strategic autonomy with our own defense. And if you want to have a useful defense, a strong defense, you have also to defend a society, a model of society. The more your model of society will be great, democratic, and respect human rights, the more you will find soldiers to fight to defend your model of society. No defense without values, and no values without defense. You will not survive if you cannot protect your values. And that will be my conclusion. Thank you.
Yes, maybe now I think the idea, if you want to can share the moderation with Gilles, we have to start the debate. After the excellent intervention of Ján Figel and Mariya Gabriel, and the other comments Gilles, Olivier, and myself we made. So please raise your hand and don't hesitate to speak. I think Mr. Frémont, you want to speak? Because you already asked me. You know, we always have to find a victim, a first victim, so he told me that you want to speak, so I give him the floor.
Thank you very much. What we heard right now is a call for war in a meeting which was supposed to be looking for avenues for peace. But I will not answer to your call for war. I'm interested in how we make our peace. There are 2 or 3 things which we're probably missing in this meeting. First of all is the context. I'm not going to enter into detail, but my approach after long studies and teaching for years, even decades, I have reached the conclusion that we are right in the middle of the probably 4th major turning point in world history. And that turning point in world history, and in particular the Mediterranean European history, is an extraordinary power shift from the West to the rest. While we were talking, France continued to implode. Europe is imploding. I'm a European, and I mean, I've been, since my teenager, I was a European. But I look at Europe imploding. I look at the West imploding, the US imploding. And while this is happening, you have this extraordinary power shift from the West to the rest. And we enter that power shift as Westerners, as European, with war in mind, with rearmament in mind. And I think we should be clear. This is a war which we are going to lose. We have a chance, I believe, as Westerners, as Europeans, to win peace, and you are absolutely right when we say we lost the peace at the end of the Cold War. It's absolutely true. We didn't do what we should have done, and we would not be where we are right now if we had worked on a peace, a real peace. And this is where I believe that Jean Monnet is an extraordinary man, and Schuman too. What would Jean Monnet have done in the present circumstances? He would have negotiated the way he was negotiating. And you remember in his memoir, there are some extraordinary parts, and in particular one part where he says, you have to all the ideas are on the table, and when they are ripe, you take the ideas and you put them on the table and you ask people to sign. This is for me one of the strongest parts in Jean Monnet's memoir. Jean Monnet would not have done what Donald Trump has done, because this is another story. We're not going into that, because we have what is taking place in the U.S. is very much, I'm an historian, 33 in the making. Jean Monnet would have been very genuine in his approach, and I think he would have put together the key actors and find solutions. And there are solutions. There are packages, as you say, packages which would bring us to solution. I'm very surprised and it's not the first time, that we have completely forgotten the extraordinary adventure, European adventure of CSC. We are celebrating this year the 15th anniversary of the end of a Geneva negotiation and the creation of OEC. OEC has disappeared, but without OEC, without the CEC, we would not have the end of the Cold War. We should never forget that. And it was an extraordinary thing. We refuse, and the Europeans refuse, to look at the creation of a European or Eurasian security architecture. This is one of the main things which we forget to work on. So I would say that I believe very much that if we sit down, and Jean Monnet would have sit down, even if on the other side you have people you don't want to talk to, and you don't want to listen to. In Anchorage, one extraordinary thing happened, which I don't know if it's Putin or Lavrov who said that. For the first time, we had the impression that someone was listening to us. And probably this is one of the great things that Trump did. Someone listened to us. And I think this is the big problem in this drama, is that no one has listened to the two sides. It's always on one narrative on one side and the other narrative on the other side. So in conclusion, I believe there are solutions. I'm fascinated by the fact that when the Ukrainian immediately at the late February 2022 did go to China, to Beijing, and said, "Can you mediate?" And then came out this process, which went so far as there was a quasi-agreement in late March, early April, and then the Western, and starting with Johnson, says, "No, you're not going to sign that. You're not going to sign that." And I think if we had let that happen, something would have come out, and the solution would have been much better for Ukraine than it will be, because Ukraine has lost since something which will not be get back. Ukraine will not get it back. Thank you very much.
It was more a message than question, but I fully agree with. Yeah, he was Mr. Jean Frémont. I fully agree that dialogue is very important. I'm only engineer, and in mathematics, physics, there are natural laws. 1 + 1 is always 2. But dialogue is ethics. And in dialogue, 1 + 1 is more than 2. More. Because you get understanding. You can get even added value, synergy, consent, whatever. But something can be achieved in dialogue, and each sincere dialogue starts with listening, not speaking, listening. And who listens today out of European or Western leaders to the others, to anybody? Typologically, I cannot say the name. I don't want to blame anybody. We are democratic countries, we elect. But there is no hero of Schuman or Adenauer or Monnet, unfortunately, because Europe is strong in cultures, in a moment or gift of dialogues. Without dialogue, we are lost inside, not outside. So this could be shared, and of course, the same pays for Americans. Americans have changed in elections, after elections, like a pendulum. unbelievable change. Europe is changing few degrees after election in Germany, in France, in etc. But in US it is 180 degrees one night. So even more important for Americans is to be nation of dialogue for internal and external reasons. So I appreciate it. This was not a question I am not asking, but we should be nations proposing, promoting dialogues. In 10 days I go to Astana. I never been to Kazakhstan. There is global inter-religious dialogue on top level. There was even Pope Francis. So I'm invited. I hope it will be useful, but you know, even dialogue of religious leaders is important, because when people see picture of Ayatollah and Pope together, it's a message. C'est le message. People don't read too much, encyclicals, documents, fatwas, but they see pictures. And when they see leaders together, it's a good sign of something. Together, togetherness, community. So I wanted to dwell on it because we can win, but it doesn't mean we, us, but together in dialogue. 1 + 1 is more than 2. We are all winners in dialogue. So if this momentum prevails after Anchorage, we have a chance. If dialogue is missing, then we will pay even higher price than we do.
Very briefly, I wanted to, first of all, thank you very much for your remark. I think that we all agree that for that we need really people that are listening, people that are really negotiating and not humiliating, not really playing games, not to say not fueling internal situations. So my wondering today is that more the time is passing, more there is no realistic to have this situation, because now some of the member states are really living this war as their own war. For Poland is a question of national security. Baltic states are seeing this, and that was not a hazard. That one of the studies that was done, what is the difference of the public opinion perception, what's about the next steps of the conflict. The countries from East are saying it's occupation, the key word. Countries from West are saying nuclear. So you can see the difference. And I think that that's now more dangerous. That time that is passing, we are far distancing from the solution that is reasonable, that is really having chances to offer a solution. So it's quite alarming, all this.
If I could just add, you mentioned a very important concept or act, it's listening. You know, Jean Monnet and Gilles will not contradict me. Jean Monnet explained very well in his memory how we proceed to develop the Schuman Plan and how we proceed to develop the action committee for, and he said he was visiting a lot of persons from the private sector, public sector, was putting them some question. It was mainly, he explained in his memory, it was mainly listening. And I think in this Russian-Ukraine thing, we didn't, for the last 20 years, we didn't listen. We stopped to listen because we were convinced that we are the moral right, we are the Western world, we know what to do, etc. But, for example, Jean Frémont mentioned correctly, we are in 2025. Today, the world leaders are no more the G7. The BRICS country represent economic power much bigger than the G7. This Western concept that we are the leading of the world disappears. So we have to take that in consideration and listen to the other. Whoever they are. I remember I had the privilege to meet several times the Dalai Lama, and he told to me several times, whoever you have in face of you, even if it's the worst dictator, let him speak and listen to him. And in everything that he will explain, you will find some small light that you can use to make him changing, because the change comes in the mind of the people. And you can always change the mind. But sorry to develop. So please, sorry, I forgot to.
Can I just make a remark? I've been working with the Business and Human Rights Group of Amnesty International for 20 years and with Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, and I'm surprised that nobody has mentioned the real power of multinational corporations. And that is a huge power. 150 out of the 200 top, including governments in the world, are corporations. And you're not talking about that. And when you talked about the alignment of regulation, we know right now that the European Union is not doing what they need to do. I did my LLM in Lausanne in 1992, and I wrote to Professor Bieber, who was the advisor to the European Parliament, and I asked him, I said, are we seeing an undermining of democracy in the European Union because we have the European Commission, who has looked at the legislation that has been passed by the Parliament and the Council of Ministers, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive and other sustainable measures, and the European Union the European Commission, who makes the proposals, has come back and put in place omnibuses to simplify the regulation, to stop the regulation of these multinational corporations. We represent in Europe, I'm Irish and therefore pro-Europe, 450 million people, and we're not even trying to regulate our own multinationals. And to be truthful, the gentleman who talked about force is also in how we treat countries that are not doing, how our corporations are making a lot of money out of war. Thank you.
Yes, maybe someone else.
So today's topic is about Europe. So I'm curious about how to build a sustainable peace for the whole world. Like in Asia, America, there's no such union like a European Union. So how to extend the idea to the whole world? What are the fundamental different and challenges for building the peace for the whole world?
Good question. Maybe your last person there, please. Someone.
This summer I traveled in the former Yugoslavia, and I was surprised when I crossed Serbia. I discovered that every bridge was labeled China Power. So my question is regarding this there are six European countries of Southeastern Europe that they are still not members or candidates. There are different levels of candidacy to the European Union. What do you think, Mrs. Gabriel? You mentioned that we have to give perspectives. So there are a lot of politicians who, I wouldn't say they have lost the believing of becoming a members of the European Union, but my impression is that all these countries, in the lack of strong political messages from the European Union, some foreign powers, for example, Russia or China or even Turkey, regional powers, they invest in this space, which is in the core of Europe. And is there any danger in security terms that all these spaces of Southeastern Europe are so vulnerable states, and how the European Union, what are the plans to accelerate this adhesion of these countries? And I have a second question, if I may, regarding the peace in Europe. You mentioned also the values, European values, the respect of dignity. I mean, we have strong European values, and you mentioned also at one moment the diversity as a strength of Europe. But however, we can read in everyday media that this diversity is also interpreted as a threat inside some populist political movements. So how to overcome this kind of rhetorics against this diversity, and how to reinforce the adhesion to the European Union, not as a Europe of nations, but as a Europe of citizens? Thank you.
Maybe you give first the floor to Mariya Gabriel, and after, yeah. Mariya, if you want. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. On alignment or regulation, I think that it's highly time that we change our approach. But again, when you say that you will simplify, you don't simplify something that you even didn't see how it works. because the first package that was done, it was something that was adopted but never implemented. So now I have a big problem with this. So again, we are rushing, again, we are playing games with the expectations of some member states, but at the same time, where citizens, companies are working hardly every day, we don't address the issues. I have huge problem with that, especially because for me it's linked to innovation. Innovation doesn't need regulation, innovation needs flexibility and freedom. And today we can't continue to be only associated to a regulation power. No way. We need clarity, we need predictability, but we need now much more flexibility and freedom. And let's wait the first debate on the 28th regime, because I start really to have some fears. It's a very nice idea, very nice one, but what I start to hear that will come as proposal, it's really killing killing the baby and together with the water. I think that we have really to pay attention to this. On the piece of the world, well, for me, the best operation that we have is to invest more in conflict prevention. But that's for many, many years not really the case. And after we had to revise a lot of our instruments because here the competition it's fierce. But you are right that we are talking about Russia-Ukraine conflict. We often mention Gaza. My personal concern is why we don't talk about Sudan. What's happening there, it's a shame. And no one is talking about the numbers, the cruelty of the situation, and it's not the only one example. So definitely here, we know that the previous system of the multilateral order with United Nations, it's not working anymore. For that, we need at least to reform finally the UN. We have to talk about this. Countries have now to have the right to take a decision. From global south, from different parts of the world, the Council can't continue like that. So these questions are very tricky, difficult, but we need to address. After we can see how to address different territories and different conflicts, because in that way, when you give a voice, when you give a strength for those partners to play their role, they will have a different motivation. Otherwise, we continue to repeat some of the errors of the past, not to say that we are creating ourselves illusions, and after we try to find explanations for what we created as illusions and expectations. It's not good for me. For the Western Balkans in Europe, personally, and I will really dare here to say, I believe that in 26 we'll have finally members from Western Balkans. 1 or 2, this is the question. And that depends on them. And that's what I like, that finally the European Union changed the approach. Now, it's not a hazard that I talked about the growth plan. Because for the first time, it's not European Union saying you have to fulfill these conditions and these conditions. For the first time, we changed the methodology. You can work on the different fields spontaneously, simultaneously. Second, you defined yourself, your national plan, which reform and which result you'd like to obtain, and that will be registered as success and advancement. And we see immediately the difference. Some of the countries took this opportunity in an extraordinary way. And at the same time, finally, we created a motivation for people that are working on the ground every day to feel this European integration, young people or companies or startups, by introducing the gradual integration. So I very much hope that now with the second plan for the regional market, no one is talking about this, and they were huge achievements. We need really to see, to keep the pace of the last two years, because in a very paradoxical way, suddenly many of the things started to work and there is much more motivation. Don't listen only to the political leaders. We have many other people behind that are the real driving force of this movement, and that's what we should continue to support. That's why it's important when some representatives are going in those countries, they have to meet students on the street and not only the political leaders. these kind of signals, we should really not underestimate them. Because now we give hope, we have really created new expectations, there is a lot of opportunities. It's up to us to accelerate the process. And I'm coming from the region, and I also believe that finally we created a regional competition. Because I think that one of the main drivers is when you see that your neighbor is advancing or more rapidly than you. Don't forget, in this region you have a real patriotism in a noble sense. It's not nationalistic forces that can be used and are instrumentalized, but in a very noble way when you see that your neighbors, your friends from the other side of the border have many other opportunities, that's creating additional power also to advance. And in this part of Europe, there is a big potential to unlock. I didn't touch many of the issues, but I can't understand why we continue to talk about energy and we don't talk about the corridors, the transports, even for the military and defense. This Corridor 8, when finally will be realized? We're talking about this for many, many years. Western Balkans are key, and they are part of Europe. It's highly time to show them that it's not empty words. That's my message.
Maybe I will just compliment. When I was special envoy of the European Union since 2016 on religious freedom, especially because of mass atrocities in Iraq and Syria and Middle East and by ISIS, I have seen a lot of bloody territories and situations. And Europe can help without, missiles or hard power, by solidarity, sharing its, gifts, values, help, even communication, because I succeeded to get out of prison or from the death penalty several people in Pakistan, in Sudan, on Cuba or in Iran. It is possible, but we have to be active. I said, nemo dat quod non habet. The worst realities or allies of evil are indifference, if we don't care because it's far away, it's not me. It's indifference, ignorance, if we don't know, we even don't study or try to find information. We don't know, ignore. And if we are scared, have fear to say something, to raise voice, to stand up, and to do something. Europe, which is capable of engagement, of solidarity, of, raising its voice on behalf of the persecuted or people in need, is welcomed. I've seen a lot of anti-Americanism in many countries, but I didn't see anti-Europeanism only inside Europe. So this is not the end of history, but it is precondition or good condition to do something. If you are accepted, let's do something. And on this Europe of nations, Europe of citizens, I said as much freedom as possible and only as much regulation as necessary for the justified interest of member states. I have a passport, you have passports. It's European Union and Slovak Republic. It is the one of the 10th most strong passports worldwide. I think the 9th position currently. There is a ranking concerning visa-free travel. But this is strong passport of small Slovakia only because this is EU as well, in connection. So for me, there is no dilemma to be Slovak and to be European. It's part of my identity. And this, understanding of our identities is important because we are all different. My son is different from me. He was in Rome yesterday, today in Paris. Freedom. But we are all equal in dignity. When you look to Charter of Fundamental European Union Rights, the first value quoted is dignity. Do we care about it? Do we know what it means? that dignity is not only about rights, but also duties. As father, as husband, as citizen, I have duties, 7/24, all the time, not sometime, ceremonially, birthday, all the time. So this awareness, maturity of citizens, nations, you know, lords of the Union are member states. Only with consent of all, anybody else can be invited. Only with consent of all, including smallest Malta, a budget can be adopted. Only with consent or approval of all, a change can be made in treaties, small correction or change. So to be aware that we are citizens of member states and we are lords of the Union, and then that the Union serves citizens as it should, is important invitation to maturity, balanced attitude, not only to ask to get money, funds. And enlargement, better to say, is Europeanization of the Union. Enlarged Union is more European. We are more complete. If somebody is missing, we should care. We should ask why, when it will happen. So this is a community principle. This is a community mentality. We need it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If I may add one comment, if you allow me, Gilles, because you mentioned Western Balkan, and something came on my mind. You know, I'm an ancient European, so to confirm how urgent it is to take the Balkan country and all of them. I will say not which I choose one, but okay, as soon as possible. No, as soon as possible. I tell you one story, but not so many people know. It's about Jacques Delors and about the war in Yugoslavia. When after the death of Tito, there was a kind of presidency in the Yugoslav countries where each member of the Yugoslav Federation shared for 1 year the presidency of this system. And when it started to break, because of Milosevic, of the nationalists and so on, they invite Jacques Delors in Belgrade. And he stayed there for 2.5 days. He spoke with all the leaders of seven republics, 6 or 7? Seven. And they were discussing how to solve the issue of nationalism and so on. And there was 2 options. He mentioned 2 options. Option 1 was you should create a European Yugoslav community as we have in Brussels, with a commission, with a court of justice. You see no enthusiasm on the Yugoslav side. And then the other option, it was quoted by Slovenia, by Croatia, by, I think, Macedonia, no, not North Macedonia, by the time it was Macedonia, others, they say, take us in the European Union. If you take us now, we won't have war. So Jacques Delors came back. He reported to the council. Of course, he said this, and all the members of the council say, no, we can't take them. We can't take them. They are too far from all the rules, the precepts, and the war starts. So I always, when people mention Western Balkan, and we have to wait. And this is very dangerous, as it mentioned. We should get some, maybe not to take all of them, but as I say, it's very dangerous because other countries are there around, we know, and peace is under threat. Peace is under threat. So sometimes we have to be, as I said, Jean Monnet and Robert Schuman, they were thinking beyond the question. They saw the urgency to take Germany in the European community, despite all what happened in that time was just 10 years ago or 5 years ago. When Chancellor Kohl made the reunification, it looks like economic nonsense, but it was a political decision. So sometimes sometimes you have to take a real statesman, a real politician. He take decision beyond the practical question, economic, practical, and details. These are all details. The long-term peace is not a detail, but it's just my comment. Sorry. But if someone, I'm sorry, I speak too much. Please, lady.
Thank you so much. I really learned a lot tonight. So I speak also as a Romanian and Swiss. I share this feeling of implosion, maybe not implosion, but certainly of fragilizations of European power. You spoke about power, but in reality, when we see today what happens in the world, European cannot speak as a one, talk about a unique market, but we do not speak as a unique political actor with real power of negotiation. So we don't have the baggage behind. That's a reality. But always I'm asking you, really, this is a real question, because I try to understand this fragilization, implosion, and when I look to the political class all around Europe, you can't not acknowledge a deterioration of the quality of politicians. We spoke about taking decision, but I think for this you need political courage, and you need character, and you need a sense of altruism in a cause, in a European cause. And I really feel that in the last 20 years something happened with the political class, something we didn't do right at European level. We didn't prepare a generation of politicians that really engage for beyond themselves. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but and I don't understand what happened. Can you are people who are there, and you are there. What happened? What did we do wrong? So at least we can now start to prepare the right generation of politicians and give them the tools to be these politicians of courage and of dedication, of altruism to a cause that go beyond their little political games and next election calculations. Because this is, I feel, we are right now. And in spite of all good willing and projects we have, in the end, any politicians will decide function of, for my next re-election or election, something like that. But sorry for my ignorance. Looking forward to your answer.
Yeah, this is, I have long experience. I'm still around. And my father would love to have this, problems or crises or questions. I a bit mentioned the generation of Schuman, Monnet, Adenauer. They see the large picture or reality, complex and long-term. And this is missing now. We need to see consequences of our decisions in relation, for example, to Ukraine for 20 years, in 20 years. This war could have been prevented. But the European Union must be a peace builder, not peace consumer. Statistician around now monitoring or shouting. I'm critical because 20 years ago we joined the Union and it was a different Union. It was different European Union. European Commission became highly political body, highly, more than needed. It is political institution. Parliament is political institution. But I don't want to speak long, but statesmanship is missing. Politics deal with daily issues. Tomorrow media echo. Next year elections. Let's hope to win. Statesman thinks about next generation. To be successful, to get the fruits, not the deficits. When sons or daughters pay for their fathers and mothers, what kind of fathers and mothers are they? To deliver minus to their children. Lost momentum, lost future. So statesmanship is missing. We have politicians. Quantity is enormous, everybody, everywhere, all the time. But statesmanship is missing. But not only here. Look to Americans. I was very happy to see the letter of John Fitzgerald Kennedy to Jean Monnet, appreciating what he achieved in 20 years, more than many kings, emperors, queens in centuries, to get people together for peace in a community. So this sort of attitude today, understanding that politics and policy is service to common good. How many politicians speak now about common good? Bonum commune. What is it? Where is it? In which shop? Perception of that something is good and something is bad. And if I pursue, nurture good, we will get good fruits, including peace. Peace is not fata morgana, even in Eastern Europe. We needed East to win war over Nazism and fascism. We needed East, including Gorbachev, to win over communism without shooting people, maybe exception in Romania. But it was a Velvet Revolution. We used the term Velvet Revolution in 1989, and then Velvet Divorce of Czechoslovakia and Velvet remarriage into European Union. So this story was possible because we cooperated in a peaceful mentality. And we had to, and it is important always to get it into deep roots and foundations, not just, to use a momentum for a while, but this enlargement of European idea from Atlantic till Ural was not finished mission, unfinished homework. There is right for Europe as a community. Of course, they have to behave like friends of community or members of future community. But sharing this mentality is our selfish interest in Balkans, in the East, and even in the neighborhood of Europe, because Europe can export this mentality of peace via cooperation. This is our interest. So, this was an attempt to answer your question about situation.
Well, maybe I would rather say that something more, that today we are witnessing how the political systems are shaped in a way to eject and to reject everyone that is having a vision, a long-term strategy, and is thinking about the next generation and not the next election. I think that the society changed, the way in which we communicate changed, the tools to put pressure changed. Look only with the disinformation. We know the tactics, creating small tensions, and all the media are occupied on one small problem, and behind we know that there are big things that are happening, but this person that is in charge to make it, to give a solution, don't have even the time or necessary, I don't know how to say it, necessary framework to provide this solution. And that could be created every single day. I think that the hope in this situation is really the link with citizens. Because I believe that citizens can be induced in error or manipulated for a short time, but never for a long time. We need really to continue, and that's my personal experience. I personally have seen that because I'm thinking big, partnerships, a lot of new things for a first-time foreign strategy in the entire history of a country, and you position yourself with clarity, there is huge work behind, you are simply rejected by the system, and you can't imagine the forces that can be really mobilized against you. It's difficult. But 2-3 months later, when you are going on the street and you meet people and they are shaking your hand saying, you are our hope, you did it. So you have to be very patient. You have to be very strong. And that's why I said it also in my intervention, your role, the role of every one of you, every one of us, it's important. If we resign, there will be even no sense to struggle and to do good things and to build peace and dialogue and cooperation. That's why we should never resign. We should really stay determined, as Jean Monnet said it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your intervention. I would like to add something about the Monnet method. And I am also from the Association Jean Monnet. And I would like there is no confusion and misunderstanding about the method. I would like to recall and remember the history, and there is two phases during the war. Jean Monnet had joined de Gaulle and the resistance, and Jean Monnet has been sent by Churchill to convince Roosevelt to send weapons to war to win the war. And then, after the war has been won by the Allies, he has tried to make the peace with the Germans. And Monnet has applied this method to put people around the table with the Germans, not with the Nazis. Thank you.
Only one thing about the common good and education of new politicians. We were, 20 years ago almost, I think, in a world of citizen. Citizen, they have duty and right. Now we are in a world of consumer, only services. And this is not only a European problem, this is a Western civilization problem. And if you want to change that, you have to invest in education, and you have to prepare a new leader. You have to come back to philosophical courses. Humanities, we forgot during 25 years, almost one generation, to teach those courses. That's why we have what we have now. Thank you.
We will take a very last question. You have the microphone, because we have to end up quite soon.
The gentleman behind. Please. Hello. I'm Damien Naird. I have a practical question for you. I volunteer for a Swiss-based organization called Opération Libéraux. Our mission is to promote a democratic and open Swiss society, and one of the pillars of our action is to promote Switzerland's integration or collaboration with the European Economic Community and with the European Union. Recently, as we probably all know here, the Federal Council adopted the draft of the negotiation mandate for the bilateral 3 agreements. And the UDC, I mean, amongst other parties, have been very quick to jump on this opportunity to flag a lot of disinformation about the undemocratic process of the European Union, some strawman arguments, which I think are, for the public opinion, quite convincing. What we're trying to do is using social media to try and find concise messages to communicate to younger people about the added value of a Swiss society, but this can apply to the other European nations. What it is to be part of Europe, what are the advantages? So my question for the panel today is, thinking of younger people, people who are unpoliticized or who are disenfranchised from the political establishment, how can we formulate arguments that will speak to people in simple terms? How can we battle the rhetoric of demagogues and the far-right leaning parties use disinformation?
Use your own Swiss success stories on European projects. You have brilliant people, you have brilliant examples, but you can definitely amplify their success. And I'm thinking particularly on Swiss participants in Horizon Europe program. That's excellence world one, global level. And you have so many examples from startups and business communities to local services. Really, for me, the best way, because if you'd like to convince, you have to provoke emotion. That's what today I'm really accusing a little bit the European Union. They lack the passion and emotion. And for that, we need to touch people personally. That's why, simple advice, if I can help, I will be very glad. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I would say the young people are full of imagination and they are good in imagination or networking and social media. Imagine life without freedoms, basic freedoms, including freedom to study elsewhere or reside elsewhere. I imagine our borders being re-established as they were 20, 25, 30 years ago. Imagine our space with divided currencies or the old-fashioned floating and unstable currencies. I wouldn't say that European Union is something perfect without mistakes or without even problems. No, but it's real. We didn't have anything better. We didn't invented anything better. But young people can improve it, can make it better. Of course, I said, and the EU is innovation per se, unprecedented. And innovation should come again with the new generations, improvements, but always human dignity as departure point, criterion, and the objective of any public measure and policy. This is our value number one, chapter number one in the charter. Look to the list, number one. If we stick to this, we are promoters of common good. If not, we are working for majority against minority, for big nations against, newcomers. Or it must be beneficial for big and small, for rich and poor, for old and new. Then it is common good. That's what I mean by common good. And Monnet didn't invite Americans. Why for? It was European plan. But we were not able in the last 20 years, or 30 years, better to say, to fulfill the original plan, which was from Atlantic to Ural. Why? We can speak a lot about Prodi, Barroso, meetings. Russian bear is too big, was big. Now, many people say Ukrainian war is a proxy war. So, if Americans understand European peace and want to contribute, they should be at the table. And they are actually. Even Europeans go to Washington for information, for advice, for something. I would love to see Adenauer in Germany, de Gaulle in France, being courageous and wise enough to set the agenda. But we don't have them there. So I spoke about large community because if we share values, if we believe there is civilizational mission, that we have responsibility for the world peace, this shouldn't be a problem to work with Americans on peace. We had to get them on our side in the First World War, in the Second World War, in the Cold War. So now what? There should be a long-term vision, a long-term community of interests. And peace is the first one, for all, not for some, majority, the big. So please understand me. If Europeans would be able to do what is our homework in Europe, it would be fantastic. Change of century. But it is not. I'm sorry. So we need to invite others to be together, Europe in the center, but together. Thank you for understanding.
Thank you so much to our wonderful panel. There is really a lot of food for thought, as we say. And thank you very much for participating. And now, if you still have a few minutes, there is the aperitif outside. So I thank you, and I wish you a very, very nice evening. And as you may know, on the 9th and 10th of October, there will be a big international colloquium that we co-organize on the theme of European security. So you find the information on the website. So if you have time and are interested, please join on the 9th and 10th of October. Thank you. Bye-bye.